This broadcast is the property of Codependents Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependents Anonymous is not permitted.
All right, let me get back to where I can see myself. So,
Okay,
I'm going to take the laptop. Can you guys see me okay? It's very bright in this room, so the light isn't terrific. Hi, my name's Evie, and I am very grateful to be in recovery from my codependency. Oh, and I want to set a timer. Bear with me Leo and I both have a tendency to talk too long, so, yeah, right. Okay, so I'll give you the 2-minute background. I grew up in a family where my mother was a Holocaust survivor. My father met her right after the war. She came to this country totally by herself. I was conceived on their honeymoon. I was the oldest of 3 daughters. Behave yourself. And I was expected to be exceptional and perfect. And I started arguing with my mother when I started talking, which was at about 9 months. And we fought throughout my childhood because she wanted a doll that she could control, and I am extremely independent. I also grew up feeling less than, which is really crazy. I was younger than everybody else in my class because I skipped a grade. So instead of feeling better than or feeling good about that, I always felt less than because I was younger. And I never felt really good about myself. And I went through my life looking for boys and then men to make me feel better about myself. And literally, I think from the time I was 9 years old until sometime in my 30s, I was never without a boyfriend. So I managed to be married and divorced twice by the time I was 28, had a 2.5-year-old child who I basically raised by myself. I was living in the Boston area. My family was all the rest of my family was in New York. I moved away because I just couldn't stand being around my family. I had almost no relationship with my parents. They had spent my college years threatening to disown me if I married somebody who wasn't part of our religion. And basically, I decided if their religion was more important to them than I was, then I didn't want to stay connected to them. And I had one sister who I fought with constantly, and my other sister and I were close, but we were quite distant in age. So, and my ex-husband, my son's father, my son was from my second marriage. He was basically worthless. I had no business being with him. So, but I got a great kid out of the deal. So basically I raised my son by myself, and I was very lucky. I went to work in the computer industry in 1967. So I was able to support us and all that. But my relationships with men were horrible. And I kept going back and forth. You know, I spent my entire life either trying to make a relationship work or in pain because one had just broken up. And I started doing all sorts of things to help. And I was doing therapy, and I was very lucky. I found CoDA when it was a year old because I was desperate for it. I had tons of friends who were 12-step people, and yet I didn't fit into any of the other programs. So thankfully, I found CoDA, and I walked into my first CoDA meeting and knew I was where I belonged. So anyway, I met this guy, interestingly enough, online because we both worked for a computer company, and we had our company's intranet. And in 1989, I met this nice guy online, and he was just out of a marriage, and I was actually in a relationship that I had no business being in because it was a rebound relationship, and we became good friends. And when I finally decided to end that other relationship, I decided that I needed to spend time with friends doing stuff because it was my son's senior year in high school. And he had decided to enlist in the Marines for early entry, a delayed entry, I'm sorry, while he was in high school. And by the way, I'm a child of Vietnam. You know, I was a peace marcher. And he, of course, decided to go into the Marines. So he would be leaving to go to boot camp. And he'd kept me alive all those years, I swear, you know. And so I knew that I needed to start spending time with friends. So decided to do things with friends. And make a long story short, this friend and I, and his name is Leo, he happens to be sitting right next to me now. We realized that after having been friends for over a year, we were in love. And we were so happy. We were absolutely so happy because we were sure that this was going to be it. You know, we were both in CoDA. That was how we met. We met on what was called a notes file. It's like a group, like a Google group for a 12-step notes file. So we were both in CoDA, and we just figured we had it made. Well, lo and behold, all of our issues started to surface. And before long, we were having problems. And I don't even remember if the serious ones focused before we were married or if they didn't really start until after we were married. But we got married after we'd been together as a couple almost 2 years. My higher power told me we needed to be married. And I'm grateful because I have a feeling that if we hadn't gotten married, we might not have hung in there when the going really got tough. So things began to go south, and the problem that we had was that Leo was in the he would feel threatened, and he would then start verbally abusing me, and then those of you who know me know that I'm really tough. You know, I don't put up with a lot of crap, and yet I went into victim mode. So that's why when I hear people saying, you know, to women that have been victimized, you know, why don't they just get out? If somebody like as tough as me can get into victim mode, then anybody can. And so all I was trying to do was I tried to manipulate him. I tried to, you know, get him to talk so that we could fix things. I mean, it was awful. So he was verbally abusing me, and here I was basically abusing him by acting like a victim and trying to manipulate him, and it just was not working. And so what happened was, I'm about to run out of my 8 minutes of time. Let me stop it. Shut it. We went to it was actually an Al-Anon conference, and while we were there, I wasn't sure we were coming back together. While we were there, I realized I basically had to say to him, and this is what I ended up saying to him: I love you, and I want this marriage to work. And right now, it just isn't. And unless some things change, we are going to have to break up. So what are we going to do? And he heard me. And from that point on, we at least started to head in the right direction. And I will now let you continue. So there you go.
And now, hi, I'm Leo. And now for the rest of the story. For those of you that aren't old enough to remember that news guy. Well, she told you a bit about our marriage thing. My background is quite the opposite of hers. I had two parents that both abandoned me, and the expectation that I had was that was given to me is that you're going to fail. No matter what you try to do, you're not going to do it right. You're going to pick the wrong thing to do and screw that up too. I was told every day about how stupid I was and how lazy I was and I couldn't do anything right, la, 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 la. I mean, this was constant. And at some point, I swallowed all that junk and began to believe it, which is really nuts because I'm not stupid and I'm not lazy and I'm definitely not worthless. But, I believed that I couldn't do anything right. And I became very sensitive to anybody telling me or saying something that I perceived as them telling me that I wasn't doing something right. If I got the idea that you were telling me I wasn't good enough, I would react in either the fight or flight mode. So I would either take your head off verbally, or you may not ever see me again, that sort of thing. So I had no idea how to resolve any kind of conflict. When I was a kid, I lived in a slummy neighborhood, not the best section of Boston. And so I didn't see anybody working on anything resembling a relationship other than people fighting and crap like that. And I wasn't wild about that sort of thing either. So at any rate, it took me quite a while, and I still fall back into that. It's amazing that even after 32 years in CoDA, I can still get triggered and regress to that 10-year-old kid that, flailing about trying to figure out what was wrong with him and why nothing worked. And I went through many. I've had 2 wives previous to Evie, and neither one of those relationships worked well. Although I did get 2 really nice kids out of the second marriage, and my screen is moving. Is that me that's moving? Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, sometimes when you talk, the screen goes, it's really good sometimes, and then all of a sudden it starts bouncing up and down.
That's because I'm holding it up because I don't like the angle when I'm sitting back. So anyhow, you'll have to put up with my bad angle. Get a good look at my double chins. So I have 2 kids. Obviously, I said that. And they turned out really great in spite of me and their mother and all our problems. They turned out great. Her mother and their mother and I separated when they were 10 and 5. And so they didn't have to see us having problems, and they didn't have to be in the same house with me, which is good, because I used to do, in spite of the fact that I said I'd never be like my stepfather, it turns out that I was. And I would take so much crap without saying anything until I got to a point where I just boiled over. And so it was like living with a time bomb and you couldn't read the timer. And at any rate, I got into CoDA and things really started to look better. And Evie said she had a lot of 12-step friends, but she didn't feel comfortable because she didn't fit any of the other programs. I didn't have any 12-step friends that I knew of. I found out some of them were afterwards, but I fit into just about all of them because I would do anything just to not be me for some period of time. And she said we were together knew each other for a year before we realized we were in love and that we wanted to get married or whatever. And it's like, I had absolutely no intention of being in love again or getting married again. Tried that twice. It didn't work. And my impression was that it sucked and I wasn't going back there. And sure enough, I got married again and life turned to shit again. And not only did she give me basically an ultimatum, but at one point I remember looking in the mirror and saying to myself, what the hell is wrong with all the women in the world? You know, you meet them, they're all nice and everything's wonderful. You get hooked up, maybe even married, year down the road or so, they're all saying the same thing. You're not the man I married. You're not the man I signed up for. And it's like, I am. I'm the same jackass you married, you know, or whatever. You know, because I didn't see anything different. Finally, it dawned on me that there is one common denominator in all these problems, and I was looking at him in the mirror. And I'll tell you, that's the worst feeling in the world. But it's the most necessary feeling in the world, because if you don't know you have a problem, you're never going to fix it. And I didn't want any of these problems. I didn't want to be wrong again. Jesus, I'd been wrong enough. I didn't need to be wrong again, but I was. And so the only way to be not wrong was to fix it. And so I started working on fixing it. We started working on fixing it. When Evie finally got over her compulsion to fix it by herself, we actually started working on it together and fixing it. We used to have these Sunday morning sessions where we'd lie in bed and she would ask me questions and try to fix me. Those were the most horrible hours of our relationship. The more she tried to pussyfoot around me and, you know, ask me how I'm doing, is this okay and is that okay, that just drove me up a wall, and I became nasty, right? Not physically, but verbally abusive, because I just wanted to shut her up, because that wasn't fixing anything. That was just aggravating me. So we finally got to a point where we figured all of this out with the help of a marriage counselor, couples counselor. And I did not have a lot of faith in counseling either. But, and we walked into the room and I looked at this guy and I said, oh shit, I'm going to have this guy for lunch. No, he doesn't know what side of the world the sun comes up on. And, I've never been so wrong about somebody in my life. He didn't let me get away with anything. But he helped us a lot. And we made a couple of vows to each other over and above the marriage vows. And that was one of the most important ones, was that we would never just walk out of a room to end a conversation. If we felt we couldn't stand being there and finishing, we would say so. I would say to her, I can't continue right now. I need a break. I'll be back in a little bit. I'm not going away. And yeah, I'm a little angry, but I'm not going to run away. I'm just going to take a break. That works. Walking out, slamming the door, that doesn't work, because the other person has no idea what's going on. And at any rate, I could go on for hours, but it's time for me to shut up.
Okay, so I'm back. So I'm glad Leo brought that up about our, that promise we made to each other. That's made a huge difference. One of the things I wanted to bring up was something I learned very early. I was lucky enough to meet our founders, Ken and Mary, after I'd been in CoDA for about a year. And they talked about something that has stuck with me ever since. They talked about that it was important that their relationship not be an A, that it be an H. And then what they meant by that was that if their relationship is an A, neither one of them is standing up straight and they're connected. And if one of them starts to fall over, then the whole thing falls over. Okay. And what they had discovered was that they needed to be able to each stand on their own 2 feet and to have this connection. So there were actually 3 things in their marriage, each of them independently plus their connection. And as long as each of them independently was working to be the best they could be, working on their own recovery, then there was a good chance that their marriage would work. Because if one started to fall, the other one wasn't going to fall along with them. And I have used that and thought about that and shared it with all my sponsees because, I think that's made such a difference in our marriage. So I don't want to go on for too long, but I want to talk about what's happened since then. We struggled quite a bit. Over the years. We ended up 22 years ago. I decided I wanted to move. My whole family had migrated out west, including my son. And I wanted to move to Southern California, and Leo agreed to come with me, although we weren't so sure because we were still struggling. And we moved to Southern California. And we lived there for 19 years and decided 3 years ago that it was never going to feel like home and it was time to come back to New England. And we really continued to struggle the early days in Southern California. But we made up our minds that we were going to do what we could to make this work. That we were not willing to just walk away because we were just going to have the opportunity to do it again with someone else. And it's just our marriage has just continued to grow. You know, we struggled. I don't want you to get the idea that just when we realized how much we needed help that we were able to do that quickly. That took, what do you say, about 5 years to get to that stretch, something like that, where, you know, we were in couples therapy for a couple of years. We continued. We did not go to CoDA meetings together during most of that. Today we can go to CoDA meetings together. That's not a problem, but we did not during that period because we really felt that we needed to be able to share honestly without the other one in the room. The mirror today, our marriage is a miracle. I'd say we just celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary in January. I'd say the last 10 years, it just keeps getting better and better and better. I can't imagine how we ever could have done this without CoDA. He is my best friend. And I am so grateful to this program and to everybody in it. And for any of you that are struggling, I just, you know, as long as you've got a partner that is willing to hang in there and work it with you and take responsibility, that, you know, each of us had to learn to take responsibility for our own actions and how we were, what we were bringing to the relationship. And it's just so worth it. So I will let Leo say a few more words if he'd like.
Yeah, that A and H thing. Just okay. The first time I saw that was in a
Sorry to
book.
interrupt again, Leo and Evie. People are
Say what?
the screen's moving quite a bit for people, and it's causing some, you know, motion sickness.
That's me again.
Well, no, it's just so if you know, if you got a table you can set it on, that would be great. Or just
anyway, the first time I saw that was in a book that was written by Robert Subby, and a couple of other people contributed. And the way he explained it was that there are two people that have a connection. But if the two people are leaning on each other and anything happens to the connection between them, the whole thing fell apart. and that's when he used the vision of an A. If you take the connection out, then there's nothing to hold the two pieces together and they fall down. Whereas in an H, you have the two uprights and they still have a connection. But if something happens that the connection isn't strong enough, then either of the uprights can still maintain their balance. At any rate, it's the same general idea, just a slightly different viewpoint from Robert. And everything else Evie said was pretty correct. Aha. And I don't even know what else to tell you. One of the things, though, is that I'd recommend is that if any of you, as you've been listening to us and as you start listening to the other questions, just try to think of the one thing that's wrong in your relation or that you think needs the most help. And we'll let you know what we think about that and whether we've had that experience and what we did about it. Neither one of us is going to tell you what to do. We will tell you how we've handled any similar problems or familiar problems. But as far as telling you how to do it, that's not what we're here for. We're here to share our experience. So anyway, I will give it back to Madam.
Okay, sorry if I'm moving. I think I got so emotionally involved in what I was saying that I was moving around a lot. I have trouble with my lower back, so I have trouble sitting at a table for long periods. Okay, so we're going to open things up. If you have a question, if you want to say something, okay. You will have to unmute. They can unmute themselves? Okay, Ellis.
Hi,
Please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Hi, I'm Ellis. I'm living in Ventura County, California.
Hi, Ellis.
Hi. I also sent you a personal text in the chat, Evie. So I really appreciate your story. I came to CoDA. I hit rock bottom by fighting with my husband, and that's what's brought me to CoDA. And it's been really eye-opening. I'm relatively new. I'm in my 3rd month, and it's been so rewarding. I wanted to ask you, okay, so the 3rd tradition, the only requirement is for healthy and loving relationships, right? So I feel like that for me in the beginning, I didn't even know if I wanted to have a healthy and loving relationship. It's only since I've been doing the work and realizing that love is important and learning what love means, that I've understood that as an important part of my well-being. What I want to ask you guys is, I guess, like, if it's not too personal, you can choose not to, but and I understand the H and the A, that's something that has been really eye-opening for me. It's been incredibly eye-opening. I've been actually doing that work without that symbolism or analogy. I guess my question is, do you ever, if the H happens, okay, so in the work, the risk is in the H, the line doesn't connect, right? You work on each other and you eventually get to the point. That's what my fear is. How do you work on each other and work on yourselves and then get that line to connect between you? Just some ideas. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alice. Interesting question. Well, I think for me, the most important thing was to work on myself. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm shaking. I get excited. I have a lot of energy. Here, let me do it this way. See, this is how he's helping me. He's now holding it for me so I won't bounce it. The most important thing is to work on ourselves. Okay. That's, I think, what we've learned, right? And to let go of the outcome, the focus on the outcome. You say you're new to the program, so I don't know if you have a relationship with a higher power yet. But that, for me, developing a relationship with a higher power and trusting that my higher power knew what was best for me, and letting go of my focus on the end result was the most important thing to do for me. So, you want to add something?
Just that you asked how that connection developed, and the connection develops when you find somebody that you feel can help you become a better person. And it doesn't have to stay there. You can't, I don't want to use the you, but I can't begin to allow somebody else to really love somebody else until I can love myself. So if I'm not really working on my program, then I have no way of knowing how to love somebody else. So that connection can't be there. And the more I work on myself, the more I love myself, the easier it is for me to be able to love somebody else. The other thing that a lot of people do not seem to understand is that love is not a noun. It's not a thing. Love is a verb. You can't love somebody inactively. It's something you do for someone. It's not something that just happens. You have to take an active part in it.
Okay.
This is not working.
Okay. Oh, you want me to hold it? Okay.
Well,
Do you have anything else you want to say?
no.
Okay.
I'm cooked.
Okay. So we're going to move on, Alice. Dave, behave
Right.
yourself, okay?
Yes.
Hey, I like
Hey.
the beard.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys look great too. It's good to see
Thanks.
you.
Good to see you too.
It's interesting to hear your story this way. I've never heard it this way, so it's very interesting. How's things been going since you moved back east? How's that? How'd that work out? How's that going?
Great. We love it here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was moving back was really important. We never really felt like
Never felt like home.
Never felt like home. Never
Too
felt like home.
Too many people, too much
Yeah.
concrete.
The weather was wonderful. But this is where we're meant to be. So we're very happy to be back.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julie, where are you? Not on video. We can't see you.
Can you hear me though?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
hi.
Hi. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What do I say? I'm feeling so grateful, and my higher power's presence is here. Hi, family. My name is Julie. I'm a recovering codependent, and I have chills right now because, where do I begin? I was a member of a very unpopular board of trustees. I was on the board. And what happened, there was a lot of controversy, drama, chaos, but our primary purpose is a desire to have healthy and loving relationships. So instead of me resigning from the board, I worked my 12 steps. And I did a 4th step inventory, and I was able to make an amends to the entire fellowship at the CSC. And I got to face people that I was afraid of, and joy showed up. But I want to say this, that board that was very unpopular, Evie decided to rejoin the board, and I stayed instead of leaving. And Evie made a suggestion to do a group inventory. And that brought unity back to the board, and that brought love. And also, I want to say, Leo, it was amazing to practice the principles with you when you were the webmaster for CoDA. And I know that I probably bumped heads with you. I may make amends, but you both resembled, you're my role models. I mean, I remember meeting you 20 years ago. I've been in CoDA for going on 21 years. But my question to the both of you, as a couple in recovery, during all the world service work that and local work that you've done, how do you incorporate the traditions into your relationship? And do you do a group inventory as a couple?
Not per se.
Yeah, it's not a formal one. However, by the way, it's so good to see you, Julie, even though we can't, it's so good to be connected to you. We live it, okay? I believe we live it in our lives. That they just like the steps, have been incorporated. If you're make sure you mute if you're not here, if you're not speaking. Just like I have incorporated the steps into my life. I live them. Same thing with the traditions. For example, our common welfare. I forget. Why can't I? By the way, I had my second vaccine shot 2 days ago. So, and I'm a little under the weather. So if I'm not as together as I might be, that's why. A common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon CoDA unity. It's the same thing in our marriage. Our personal recovery, independent recovery, has to come first. Okay. And then the marriage follows. And I think we utilize that. I could go to other traditions and say the same thing, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. So
The only one she has trouble with is tradition 7.
what? In what way? Oh, money.
And one last thing.
I was taught not to spend money, and Leo really likes to spend it. So.
Thank you all. And the last thing I wanted to say is that throughout the years, your friendship with Ken and Mary, I just followed and admired it because they're my role models too. So thank you for being here and being an instrumental part of my recovery.
Oh,
I pass.
Thank you. And thank you too, Julie, for being a big part of mine too. Being on the board with you was really a pleasure. And you know that I don't say often that particular board was a pleasure. Anyway, who was next? The next person is Danielle from Texas. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm codependent. I'm from Texas. So I am new to CoDA as well. Probably realized working with a therapist in December that I'm codependent, and just really in the last month have gotten into meetings and working the steps. So my question is to you, Evie. You had said that your husband was verbally abusive to you. So I am married. We've only been married for a little over a year. And through that time, he has been incredibly verbally abusive. About 4 months ago, I actually separated and started distancing myself because I knew I had a problem, because I was controlling and manipulating the situation, doing the things that codependents do to try to get control. He, in those 4 months, got incredibly even more emotionally abusive. And actually, I had even contacted a lawyer, filled out the divorce papers, all of those things. About 3 weeks ago, by the grace of God, he had a come to Jesus moment. I don't know what provoked it for him, but he realizes and has taken accountability. And I know we're in the very beginnings of maybe even trying to work it out, maybe not, because the past was very hard and the things that he said were just so hurtful. But I guess my question to you is, again, I don't know where we're going, and I'm trying to take it one day at a time per the slogan. But how did you even gain trust back and work through that?
What a great question. It wasn't easy. I'll tell you that it wasn't easy. One of the things that helped was Leo actually joined a batterers group, and he was
not exactly what it is.
Well, okay, you talk about it.
In Massachusetts, if you get hauled in by the police and sufficient times or whatever it is, anyway, part of your sentencing for abusing your wife and kids is they make you attend this class every week for 50 weeks, and they go through what's abuse and so on and so forth, and try to teach these guys and women, but most, I don't think there were any women in the group that I was with, but they're mandated by the court to attend these sessions every week. So I went over there to find out what it was all about, and I actually paid them to let me sit in on it, because I wanted to hear what they were telling these guys and see if any of it made any sense to me. And a lot of it did. Part of my background, my family of origins idea of humor was sarcasm and sarcastic put downs, and the faster and harder you could put somebody down, the further you could put somebody down, the quickest, the better you were. Okay. So, and then if somebody really slammed you, you had to be able to come back and slam them even harder. So this is just how I learned to talk to people. And I hardly notice it, because every once in a while I'll do something like that again, and I don't even know I'm doing it. So it's a lot better now. It almost never happens, and when it does happen, it's not anywhere near what it used to be. But that was my way of talking. So when she would do things that upset me, my way of talking to her wasn't honest, and I didn't know how to. I did not learn for the longest time how to say, I really wish you wouldn't do that. It makes, I get some lousy feelings when you do that. I don't like it. I don't know how to deal with it, or whatever my problem was. Okay. And it's the thing is that I had to learn how to present my problem and ask for some help with the resolution. When before that, it wasn't my problem, it was her problem, and I sarcastically told her that and told her to stop it. Not directly, though, indirectly. And that's the verbal abuse, because she had no idea what the hell to do with this. And I know exactly what that feels like, because that's the shit I got at home. And I had no idea what to do with it then. And so.
I want to get back and answer the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, because he ended up doing that group, even though he didn't have to be, and little by little, his behavior began to change. And I didn't start trusting, we didn't sleep in separate beds, although I'm sure there were nights that we did, but little by little, I began to see some changes in behavior, and the trust began to build again. And I think that's one of the reasons it took so long for things to really get headed in the positive direction, was because I was so hypersensitive. So, excuse me, what I had to do was to recognize if I was not overreacting to something that he was doing. I was so hypersensitive that if he did like 90% good and then did something, I have a tendency to react too much to that. And I started talking to my higher power about it and asking my higher power to please help me to appreciate the positive movement and to not get so focused on the negatives that continue to happen. And it's just a process. You know, the most important thing is, you know, the commitment, as we said, the commitment that we made to each other. The other one that we didn't mention was, since both of us had this huge fear of abandonment, was we made a commitment that we would, neither of us would just walk away from the marriage, that we would do everything that we could to make the marriage work. And only if staying in it was so damaging to either one of us that we had to leave, excuse me, to protect ourselves. That's the only conditions under which we would leave, and we wouldn't do it quickly. You know, we wouldn't do it without making some real effort. So I hope that helps. I want to keep moving because we got a lot of hands. Okay, Jade, you're next.
Hi, I am Jade and I'm codependent, and I realized kind of almost a year ago, but I only started attending CoDA last Sunday.
Oh, wow. Welcome.
Thank you. So I've got a Melody Beatty book that I've been reading, but anyways, it's all very new to me. And so I'm like, just trying to be patient with myself as I'm still feeling very, as I'm still feeling very confused in my head and crazy. Enough. Sorry, my dog. Okay. So I was married for 10 years and dated for since I was a teenager, and I met somebody in the fall after I've only been divorced for like a year and a half, and I met somebody in the fall after I was like, I know I need to be on my own. I know I need to heal from a lot of things. And I know that'd be the best thing for me, but I just wasn't able to hold my own, and we got in a relationship, and I know that I love him. And we broke up last week, and I know I love him, but I know I need to work on myself. So I think I'm just feeling confused about commitment and marriage, because that's what I've known for so long, is marriage and trying to make a marriage work, and wanting to commit to it. And so I think I wrote it down because I knew I'd get like flustered. So I feel like even though we've broken up, I just can't tell if I'm supposed to know, like if I'm supposed to try to make that relationship, like if it's worth it, or if it's, like, how do I know if I'm supposed to like keep him in my life and work on myself, but also, I don't know. I just feel confused. And I think it has a lot to do with the marriage commitment stuff, and also that I love him, but I'm afraid of love. Like, I don't know what, like, is love different than being in love? Like, I feel like I can't tell, and maybe that's just a thing that'll take time, but that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, love is, to me, is very different from being in love, I think. Yeah, and that's,
I call that being in lust.
yeah, being in, yeah. The love that we've developed today is very different, very, very, very different. And I had no idea that it even existed. As far as your confusion, you have every right to be confused at this point. Okay. You're new to this, your relationship is broken up, but it's not, and, I think the most important thing that I learned when I was in times like that is to take, we have a saying in 12-step, one day at a time. There were times I had to do 1 hour at a time, and sometimes I had to do 1 minute at a time. You don't need to make any decisions about this relationship right away. You don't need to make any decisions. And now would be probably not a good time. Yeah, the worst time to make any decisions. we recommend when people come into CoDA and they're not in a relationship, we strongly recommend that they not get into one for at least a year. I think it's probably should be longer, but at least a year. If you're already in one, then it's a little more complicated. Is that your doggy? Ours is here too. So, it's just, it's likely to be a real up and down time for you. And, take it as I said, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute if you have to, and don't make any important decisions unless it becomes very, very clear to you that it's time to make that decision. To me, that's when I know my higher power is talking to me. And because you're relatively new to the program, I don't know what your relationship is with a higher power, but today I can tell when it's my higher power talking to me. When I was new to program, I didn't have a clue. So I wish you good luck, and it's going to be what it's going to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who's next? Carrie.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Carrie. I'm codependent, and I have a question it's kind of twofold. I wondered if in your odyssey, if you guys had any issues with blended families, because that was something that came up for me. So I was married 4 years. I got married twice. We had a marriage, we had a vow renewal, we separated twice, and we divorced twice. And so now I'm in the process of getting divorced. So one of the questions I had, and he was in recovery too. So we did these recovery programs kind of in tandem, not in the same program. We were both in CoDA, ACA, and some other programs. But I wondered if, for me anyway, I felt like I needed to be separate in order to work my program. So did you ever have a period of time where you ever, and if you did, how did you do it? How did you work your respective programs still being together? And if you had the blended family issue, how did that factor into that work and that recovery?
Well, that's enough to write a thesis. I was going to say I could write a thesis on that one.
What we've been talking about all along is working our programs separately, because we each have to be strong enough to stand on our own. We can't do that if we're not working our programs separately. I don't know how you would work, or anybody could work a program other than by themselves. So, if it doesn't matter at this point in time anyway, it doesn't matter to me who's in the room when I share. I don't care if somebody's taking notes or pictures. I just don't care anymore. It's not that important to me. I am who I am, and it doesn't really matter to me who knows it, and whether or not somebody else likes it or not is really their prerogative. And I know today that if something happened and Evie decided she wanted to leave, I wouldn't like it, but I know that I would live through it. I'd be just as, I'd be fine. I can take care of myself. I know how to cook and clean and so on and so forth. This is not, it's not the end of the world if something happens. So I have that confidence today, and I love myself enough today to know and to be able to know that I am worth the work it takes for me to continue life by myself. And I think that until I knew that, and until I loved myself, that I couldn't get along with Evie, because I was so afraid that she wouldn't love me and the marriage would go down the drain. Then I'd be out in the cold again, and what would I do? How would I live? Because that's what happened on my previous marriage. My ex-wife, my second wife, took the kids. She sold the house, took the kids. I didn't even get all my tools out of the house, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I felt like when I looked in the mirror, there was nobody looking back. I just felt that alone because I didn't have me. And until I could get a me, I can't have a we.
I want to talk about the blended family because we had a lot of problems. We had a lot of problems with that, particularly with Leo's youngest. And I don't want to take too much time because we don't have a lot of time left. There's still a lot of people. His daughter was 6 when we got together. My son was 18 and his daughter was 6 when we got together. And she was the youngest one in her generation, and she was a princess. And I do not tolerate princesses.
And she played that princess card really well.
Yeah.
And often.
And oh my God, we really struggled. And I set limits. And she had not had enough a limit set with her. And we really struggled. Today we get along great. She's 37.
The other thing too is I moved in to Evie's house, okay, because I didn't have much of one of my own. So I moved in there, and her son was still there, and he kind of ignored me, which is okay, I guess. But he used to drink all the orange juice and nothing flat, and that was just another sign that I was unimportant, So I had some trouble getting along with him because I felt like, he just ignored me. And also he made one statement that, I don't remember who he was talking to, but he said that I wasn't his father. I was just his mother's husband, which also made me feel a little less than. And it still is not my favorite phrase, but at the same time, today it doesn't bother me. If he said that again, it wouldn't bother me at all. I still call him my stepson, whether he wants to be or not, because it's easier than trying to say it's Evie's son from another marriage, So, again, I go back to the whole thing is based on, healthy and loving relationships all have to start at home, and at home is in here. If you don't have a healthy and loving relationship in here, I don't care whether it's your blended family or your significant other, that ain't gonna work. And so once since I've been able to love myself, then I don't really care what anybody else says, even my own family or my wife's family. They can't hurt me. I'm invincible.
And today we all get along great. We really do. It's one big extended family. Nobody cares, but it really is. Let's see, who's next? I'm Enough. I love it. I'm Enough.
So should we call you Ima?
Hi. Sure. I'm Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi. I'll try and be quick. I know there's limited time. So thank you for your story. It was beautiful. It's actually very ironic for me in a sense with the A and the H. I am married for 4 years now. I was previously married for 10. But my husband and I have different last names, and mine starts with an H and his starts with an A. And
is there any significance there?
So that could actually define our marriage. And so I too spent a lot of time in the beginning trying to have those set conversations to fix, literally, it was like a scheduled time to talk and let's fix. And that drove him up the wall. But what I didn't realize is it was really messing with my ability to have serenity at all. And so, I work my recovery every day. And so I think my question is more, Leo, directed to you. So I'm amazed, honestly, the transformation just based on your story of your personal experience. the change that you experienced in your life. And I know you said, you looked in the mirror and you felt that you saw nothing and you were alone, and maybe that's what prompted the change. But I'm really curious what it was inside of you that gave you this prompt for a different perspective to even consider that you needed to work on anything at all, and to actually start doing it. And then here you are speaking today about it. It's amazing to me.
Well, I don't know that there was any one thing that did it. There were a number of things. One of them was, looking in the mirror and complaining about all the women in the world being all the same. They get to a point that I'm not the man they married or hooked up with or whatever, and so on and so forth, and realizing that the problem with all my relationships only had one common denominator. And, there was several different women that said that to me, that I wasn't who they thought I was. And so there's that. And then there's my wife saying that we had to make our marriage work. It wasn't working, and we needed to do something about it. And it's like, oh shit, here we go again. I have to do something about it. And I felt like a little kid saying, it's not fair. Why do I always have to do everything? And because that's kind of how I was feeling. And I had a face off, and it wasn't just me alone either. It was going to meetings. It was looking at these guys in that batterers group and seeing them and seeing where they went with similar feelings to what I was having and how badly it screwed them up. Realizing I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be back here because the police had to come and haul me out of my house. And I don't want to be guilty of having smacked her around. Is that where I'm going? And realizing that I had some similarities. I had some commonalities with these guys that, part of me was saying, what a bunch of jerks. The other part of me was saying, you know what? You're a lot like these jerks. And so I started to see a little bit at a time from various different locations. And one other thing I did that helped some too is I got involved in this thing they call the Mankind Project. I'm not sure what they're calling it now. I think that's what they still call it, is MKP, Mankind Project. They also have a women's branch of it, but it was really a good thing. They put you through this weekend of like Marine Corps boot camp, sort of, doing all kinds of foolish shit just because they could make you do it. Running through the woods naked at night, holding on to each other's hands, and you're blindfolded and you can't see anything, okay? So you have to trust that the guy in front of you, the guy behind you, isn't going to let you go. And it's learning to trust yourself, learning to know that you have to hold on to both of these guys or they're going to fail. So a lot of different things like that. It wasn't just one thing. And I don't think anybody could have made me do it. I didn't want to go through another divorce. I didn't want to get married. I wasn't wild about getting married the third time. And I was thinking that I'd be damned if I was going to have to do it again. So I needed to figure out what was wrong. And the fingers kept pointing back to me. Every time I thought I saw something wrong, it ended up, I needed to fix something too. It's like on step 4, this is what happened. And then the next column is, what was my part in it? I don't like that column. I never did. I never liked that. I still don't like that column, but that's the most important one. Because if I don't know what my part is, in my problems are never going to go away. So I think anybody who wants to have a healthy relationship needs to start by having one with themselves, and they need to answer those questions before that can happen. And I will now put away my soapbox.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you both.
You're welcome. Okay, we got time, I guess, for one more.
Yeah, you guys
Linda?
got 5 minutes left, and there's been some requests if you guys are willing to give some contact information either through WhatsApp or email.
Yeah, we can do. You okay to do email? Just don't. It may. And I'm also gonna. If people put things in the chat, I'm gonna save the chat.
Okay.
So do not let me get off without having saved the chat, Kevin.
Okay. So I guess those that are still in line, if you want to throw your message in the chat to Evie or to everyone, she'll get it.
Let me go right now. Everybody knows how to get to the chat by now. I'm going to put our email addresses into the chat. While Linda, why don't you go ahead while I'm doing that?
Brenda?
Linda from Florida, you're the next one with your hand up.
Hi, I was trying to share. I don't know if I am. I don't know if I'm sharing video. Anyway, I put it in the chat. My partner might be able to hear me. He has really good hearing, so I'd rather you can just email me. Let the next person go.
Okay, Brenda.
I had a question. Where do you guys live now?
We're in Connecticut now.
Oh, Connecticut. Okay. And what does emotionally available mean, and yourself and your partner, what does that look like to be emotionally available for each other?
Great question.
Open and willing to talk without offering advice that hasn't been requested. If I'm trying to fix her, I'm not emotionally available. I'm in fix-it mode. And that's typically a guy thing. You start talking about a problem, and a guy has to know how to fix it. Although my wife likes to fix things too. So, but that's not being available. That's taking care of yourself. And the other thing is, and I'm surprised I didn't mention this yet, but one of my big things about marriage is that it is not a 50-50 proposition. Mm-hmm. Anybody who enters a relationship with the idea that this is a 50-50 operation is setting themselves up to fail. Because what that does is it says, well, I did my half, where's yours? Okay? That's the wrong attitude. You have to be willing to put 100% into your relationship and into yourself, okay? And not worry about what the other person's doing. If something they're doing is really needs to change, then you can bring that situation up to them. But for you to say, well, I did half, and I'm waiting for you to do the other half to make this work. How do you know you did half? How do you know the other person hasn't done half? You need to be able to put your all into it. And I'm getting off track here.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Why can't I find the save chat? Where is it? I went under more and it's not there.
So, there's 3 dots next to the word file in the chat that says save chat.
There's next to the word file in the chat? Where?
In the chat. If you're
in the chat. Oh, next to the word. Oh, I see them. Okay. Okay, there it is. Okay, I was looking at the bottom of the screen. Okay, I'll do it just before we close that. Okay. Hey, Lou and Kathy. I'm so glad you at least got to the point where we can say hi. Unmute yourselves.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Good to hear you and see you guys.
Good to see you guys too.
Yeah, I just was going to ask you to comment on working on committees together and doing service work together or separately, and how that's affected your relationship.
We typically don't work on the same committee, although we have.
We did.
We
Yeah.
did for quite a while on SSC, but I have to admit that I was not much in worker bee mode during those couple of years. I burned out on CoDA service a few years back, and while I maintained my membership with SSC, it was more as a consultant kind of thing. I'd give my opinion when asked, but I didn't do a hell of a lot of work, so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for confrontation.
We never had problems.
Well,
every once in a while.
The only one that I can remember is that I volunteered to run Southern California's annual conference.
You gotta stop. We're gonna lose the breakout room in 52 seconds. So I've got to save the chat.
Alrighty, but anyway, we had a problem with that. So
anyway, it's been great to see everybody. I am now saving the chat. So it's going to take us some time to get back to everybody.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure being with all you guys. I wish we had more time. And this is the best I felt in 2 days. So being with all you